everybody. I'm Caitlin. I'm one of the youth librarians at Skokie Public Library, and I'm here tonight with two absolute rock stars and some of my favorite pals. This is Mandy and Melissa, who are obviously amazing librarians for young people, but also the three of us are on the Cool Summer Reads Committee. We select the annual Best of the Best books for 3rd through 5th graders. Before we get into our selections, I thought we could talk a little bit about what Cool Summer Reads is. Melissa leads us in this committee. So Melissa, do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Tell us a little bit about the selection process.
Sure. Okay, so what we do is either we decide to read books on our own, some work, some don't, and the ones that we really like, we put on a list. And so we ask someone else to read them. And if we're really excited about them, then everyone on the team is going to read them. So sometimes we read reviews about books, or we just kind of pick something off the shelf. And sometimes if we're really lucky, we've got kids like you who come into the library and are so excited about the book that they've just read, and they just want us to read it so badly. So sometimes books ends up on the list as a result of your referrals, which is pretty exciting. And then we have a long list, and we have to narrow that list down until we come to the final 10 or 12 selections that make it to our Cool Summer Reads list. So speaking of books, let's get into it. The first book that we're going to talk about today is Factopia, and that was written by Kate Hale and illustrated by Andy Smith. So this is a book full of facts. Some you may know, some that may surprise you, some that may even amaze you. And what's cool about this book is you can read it from cover to cover. You can start with one fact and jump over to another fact that's on the same path but still connected. You can use the index in the back of the book if you've got something that you specifically are thinking about and want to find out about. Or you can just open the book to any page and read a fact. So I pre-selected a couple of facts today that kind of tie in what we'll be talking about later. The first of which is the rings on an adult mountain goat's horns tell you how old it is. And if you've ever seen a mountain goat's horns, right, they're pretty long, and that's a pretty amazing way.
Wait, like a tree?
Exactly, right? Exactly.
What?
So that's pretty cool.
That's bananas.
I know. And then this other one, this one kind of gobsmacks me. So a blue whale's tongue. So picture a blue whale and how enormous a blue whale is, right? A blue whale's tongue can equal the weight of an elephant. I think that is mind-blowing. And it's hard to wrap my brain around it.
Yeah. So I read that in that book, and I told it to my kid, that fact, because first of all, I think tongues are super gross. And second of all, I could not stop thinking about it. And so I got home, I was like, you're not going to believe what I just heard about whale tongues. And my kid goes, how big is the elephant? I was like, come on, man. Take the wind out of my sails.
Oh, now I'm picturing a scale and measuring tapes and,
I know, they should have been a little more specific, apparently.
So the second book I wanted to tell you about is Better with Butter. So this book is about Marvel. Marvel is 12, and she is afraid of everything. But to be fair, the world that we live in is kind of big, and there's a lot of stuff in it, right? So Marvel is afraid of, in no particular order, things like roller coasters, earthquakes, plastic floating on the ocean, making friends, having a teacher call on her, which I have to say I can remember that's kind of scary, right? And walking home alone. So her parents and the school think that she has an anxiety disorder, but the way Marvel feels is that if you're worrying about it, then you're thinking about it. If you're thinking about it, you're aware of it. If you're aware of it, you can plan for it, right? So one of my dogs is terribly afraid of thunderstorms. So if we figure out there's going to be a storm, we try to plan for it. So maybe we go into a room with no windows so she can't see anything, or maybe put a special shirt on her that makes her feel comfortable, right? So we make a plan and we hope that plan works. So anyway, one day Marvel's walking by herself home from school, which took a lot of planning, right? and she finds herself in the situation where she has to save a baby goat. She's the only one there at that particular instant that can save that goat. So she has to put her fears aside and she saves that goat. And I don't know if you know this, but I thought this is pretty cool. So I don't know if you've ever seen any videos or heard about this, but there's a particular species of goat that when they get scared or they startle, their bodies stiffen and they faint. And this species is called myotonic, or known as the Tennessee fainting goat, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, and I forgot, the butter in the title is actually the name of the goat.
Can I just say butter and garlic are two of my favorite things together?
Ooh.
And I think I'm going to talk now about the book Garlic and the Vampire, if that's okay.
Yes.
And also another tie in there is anxiety. I think I was looking at all of our books here, and even Factopia induces some anxiety. But all of the books deal with a lot of kids who are kids or characters who are struggling with anxiety about who they are, anxiety if they could be multiple people, if they can, because we aren't just one thing, right? So in Garlic and the Vampire by Bree Paulson, I just love this book. It's a really cute looking graphic novel, which draws me to it. Again, two of my favorite things, garlic and vampires. And Garlic is a very sweet character. And there is a new neighbor that comes to town, the vampire. Now, I don't know if you guys know much about folklore, vampire folklore, but Garlic, and there she is, so sweet, because Garlic is seen as it was before we came up with antibiotics and other medicines. Garlic was like a medicinal thing. And because vampires were seen as having a disease of the blood, garlic was supposed to kill vampires. Okay. So in this book, all the other animals in here, and animals, actually they're vegetables, animals, vegetables, minerals, they're vegetables. They all come to life. They're anthropomorphized, which means you take an inanimate object, you humanize them. And I love this. I love it. We also can anthropomorphize animals in that, you see like Peter Rabbit wearing clothes and all that. But here we've taken it to the next level with anthropomorphized vegetables. And so Garlic's best friend is Carrot. And Carrot is very supportive, wonderful. And so is the witch Agnes, who is their friend. But they think Garlic will be the one to see and possibly defeat the vampire because she is Garlic. And this picture here, vampire, take heed, for I am the world famous vampire hunter Garlic, and I am here to vanquish you. But it's just so funny because Garlic thinks, just because I am Garlic, am I really going to be the one to do this? So she questions that. So I really, really, really love that book. And it's just a beautiful story. It's a beautiful graphic novel. We have some other great graphic novels, and we have some animal stories. I think the three of us love animals. I don't know if up next there's another animal story or
there is. But
yeah.
What I also wanted to say, what I also like about the books is that the characters get to be brave, right? They
Yes.
put their anxieties aside and just step up and be brave, and it ends up being really great.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you can go back to being anxious again, but your bravery really builds you up, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of these characters have gone through it, and they get to see, hey, I can also be brave. And bravery is a wonderful thing. We need more of that in the world.
100%. I also want to comment on Garlic's outfits because every one of them is adorable. She really rocks a cardigan, and I love the way she wears a scarf with them. Her boots, like, I would like to dress like that.
I want a Garlic action figure. I want to have like a Garlic doll that I can just have sitting next to me. And, I want to see a line of, I was almost inspired. When I was a little girl, I really loved strawberry shortcake. And so this was kind of brought back some of those memories of strawberry shortcake, but in a very different way. And in a way that I think would have appealed to me more than good old strawberry.
I think
Garlic is wonderful.
The smelling the head would be like a whole different experience.
Ooh,
remember smelling strawberry shortcake's head?
Yes,
Seriously, this is a great idea because I think all of the characters in Garlic and the Vampire are adorable. We should reach out to Bree Paulson and be like, have we got an idea for you?
Yeah, exactly.
She's probably not busy.
No.
Nah.
It's okay.
But I think we were going to talk about animals.
Yes.
And
we're still talking about animals. And the next book we're talking about is The Elephant Squirrel by Celesta Rimington. And I was thinking about how much I would love to be friends with an elephant. I mean, they're incredibly majestic. They're really magnificent, right? And they often seem gentle. I'm sure, I don't know how I would feel if I came face to face with an elephant, but
How much does the elephant weigh?
right? How large is an elephant? But I was reading a little bit outside of this, and research suggests that elephants have a tremendous recall powers, which helps them to remember things. There's this saying, an elephant never forgets. But that's why it's because of their ability to recall things that helps with their memory. So in this story, we meet Lexington, and unfortunately for Lexington, she can't remember who she is or anything from her past. She only knows that one day, years before, Naya, an elephant at the Nebraska Zoo, protected her during a terrible storm. And from that day on, Lexington has lived at the zoo with her foster family, or her foster dad. Now, I don't want to give anything else away, but you know that that's not the end of the story, right? I mean, I don't know. There could be aliens in the story. There could be giants in the story. There could be actual talking goats. I don't know. What do you think?
So, like Mandy pointed out, we are all animal lovers, and I noticed this too. Like when I was putting a list together for a school talk earlier, I was like, man, we had so many books on here that are dealing with animals, empathy, and anxiety, and also bravery, like being yourself and finding that strength inside. And sometimes you need a little bit of help. And this next book, I think, deals with that, and it also deals with goats. I love goats. I am a huge fan of goats in general, but the characters in the next book, at least at the beginning, are not gigantic fans. So the book that I have is the Beatryce Prophecy, and it is written by Kate DiCamillo and illustrated by Sophie Blackall, who's one of my favorite kids book illustrators. When I first saw the cover of this book, I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It looks kind of like a fairy tale. I don't know, it's kind of medieval-y. I don't know how interesting this is going to be. What I really didn't expect was to open it up on the first page. I just started laughing out loud. This book, I think, has one of the world's greatest anti-heroes, and that is Answelica, the demonic goat. She terrorizes the monks of the Brotherhood of the Chronicles of Sorrowing. She just terrorizes them. She fakes them out all the time. She's real cute. So she's like, oh, what? Go ahead and pet me. It's fine. And then like, boom. Sometimes she'll let them pet her for like 2 weeks, and who wouldn't want to pet a goat? And then she attacks them. At a certain point, a girl shows up in one of their stables. She's bloody, she's muddy, she's got a huge fever, she's unconscious, and she's clutching onto Answelica's ear. And they take her in, they take care of her, they help her out and nurse her back to health. And in doing so, they realize that she has a secret that endangers all of them. And that sets off this sort of epic adventure. It's a little bit scary, it's a little bit painful, it's a nail biter. I think there were parts that I was like, ooh, like what's going to happen? But ultimately, it's a beautiful story about strength and about friendship and about love and about the power of storytelling. I really, really love this book. I actually have a question for you all, because this was one that I felt really strongly about. I was hoping that this one would be on the list, so I'm really glad that everybody was on board with it. Was there a book that was really special to you that you felt like needed to be on the list?
I'll go. I think they were all pretty solid. I also really like that book because I really like Kate DiCamillo and Jason Reynolds, who both came to the library. But I like a lot of the authors that are on the list. But like Kate DiCamillo, top-notch writer. And this book was, I don't want to say one of her best because they're all great, but I was hoping she still doesn't lose her magic. So this book I definitely wanted to see on there. Did you have, Melissa, one that you really wanted to see?
So obviously I liked all the books on the list, but I was really excited about Amari and the Night Brothers because it was just something that I decided to read. It's not usually or typically a genre that I read. And when I finished it, I immediately put it on the list to be read. I was like, everybody has to read this. Everybody should read this book. And I loved it so much.
I'm glad that you mentioned Jason Reynolds because he's the book that I'm going to talk about next. And again, sometimes you have an elephant or you have a goat to be your superhero, but sometimes you have to be your own superhero. And that's our next book. It's called Stunt Boy in the Meantime. It's written by Jason Reynolds and it's illustrated by Raoul III. And this is a super cool book because the pictures really, really work in tandem with the words to bring the story to life. The words themselves are excellent. It's an excellent storyline. Once again, we have a kid who's dealing with some tough stuff and he has anxiety, and he describes it really similarly to Marvel, the way that she describes her own anxiety in Better with Butter. But I want to take a second and just look at the illustrations, and you can see the way that they interact with the words to tell the story. I think it's interesting. It's not quite a graphic novel, but it's not a picture book either. It's a longer story. It's really good. I feel like fourth grade is like the sweet spot for this book, which is not to say that younger or older wouldn't enjoy it. Like I'm in my mid 40s and I thought it was fantastic. I just think it's one of those books where everything works really well together. Portico Reeves is the titular stunt boy. That is his superhero name, and his superhero power is deflecting bad things from other people so that they can go on and do heroic things. So you can see here, it's Herbert Singletary, the worst. He's insulting Portico's friend, and Portico jumps in front of her so that Herbert's words cannot hurt her. And he does that all the time. So at a certain point, he's going along, he's living his life, but then something comes along that's so bad that even Stunt Boy cannot help. So he has to find a way to look inward and find the strength to deal with the tough stuff that we all have to deal with. And he's a really cool kid. I found it very realistic, the writing, super engaging, super great characters. I loved it a lot.
It was great, and I like the last illustration that you showed when he's fretting. You know, you can really, really see and feel the frets that he's having.
Yeah, I actually have another book. I love that word fret too, and that's what he calls it. I think he calls it the frets. So I have like another book once again that deals with like the drama that all kids deal with, because you know what? It's actually true. Being a kid is really hard. I have a kid right now who's 11 and a kid who's 7, and I'm watching them go through it, and it's a lot of fun, but it is also it is not without stress. So the next book that I have is called Long Distance. It's written by Whitney Gardner, and she did the pictures too. And in this book, Vega, who is our main character, is being pulled away from her town by her dads. They're moving to another place, and she hates it. She doesn't want to go. Her best friend lives there. All of her stuff is there. All of the things that she loves to do is there, but you got to do what you got to do when you're a kid. Like, you don't really have a lot of say in it. So there she is with her best friend, and they're both just devastated. She doesn't know what she's going to do, but luckily, her dad has a solution. He sees her moping around and he's like, this will not stand. You're in luck. I found this super cool summer camp for you. It is called Camp Very Best Friend. I mean, it's right there in the title, right? Like, it's Camp Very Best Friend. So what could possibly go wrong? You think nothing. Look at that flyer. It looks really fun, right? Like, there's kayaking and like that guy's got his thumb up. It's going to be amazing. It turns out that a lot can go wrong, and I am not going to give it away, but I will tell you that this book, though it does deal with some like tough stuff, some anxiety and some loneliness and some sadness about moving, it's also really, really funny.
I could relate. Again, it was another really relatable book. Even though I'm no longer a kid, it made me think back to some of those experiences. And I did not move away, but when I was young, my best friend, she was the one who moved away. And it was really hard. It was hard on my, so yeah.
This is one that we talked about because this year we had like a bunch of really golden graphic novels. And so this was a book that we spent a lot of time sort of going back, like, which ones are we going to pick? Which are the ones that we were going to pick? Let's tell the people how we get people to enjoy our books that we feel passionately about.
I think making connections is really important. I know there was another book that I really still like that was a graphic novel contender, And I really related to the character, but a lot of people didn't. And it was very nichey. And it was almost like, and the more we talked about it, the more I realized it's a great book, but there's just a small group of kids who would really relate to it. And we want something that's a little more universal, I think. So I think that's always been helpful. Again, I'm so glad I read books like that and I find books like that while we're doing this, because then when I meet the kid that needs that book or that it would be perfect for, it's awesome. But we try to find books that has a universal appeal. So that really is finding that commonality and convincing you guys that way. And this one, Long Distance, actually was one that I was on the fence about. I really liked the book, but I was just, I liked that other book a little more.
Like I said, we've said they're all such great books, and it's just finding the way to, it's hard eliminating books, right? Because they're all so good. We want you all to know about all the books, all the great books that we've read.
I think that's true. That's true for me too. I think also it's like finding, like you want the list to sort of complement
Yes.
the other books. So like, I think sort of finding where the book fits in with the rest of the book. Sometimes it's fate, right?
Fate. I was
Fate.
wondering if we were going to talk about fate next, but I couldn't tune my brain powers in. So the next book that we're going to talk about is Lotteria by Karla Valenti, and the illustrations are by Donna Sanmar. So this story is about Clara, who's living her life day to day, just going along, all the while not knowing about life and death. Life and death are playing Loteria, which is a game of chance, with Clara's life. And even though she's just living day to day, she doesn't know that each card that they're drawing means something else will happen, or that her life will take a completely different direction. So I thought it was a real page turner, and at times it was really intense. And I looked up the illustrator, Donna Sanmar, and so she does work in digital illustrations. So here we see life and death, but she also works with paper art. So the cover is actually, it's paper art. So the pieces are cut out and painted and then layered on top of each other so that when you see it, it's a 3D effect, and it's so gorgeous and cool. If you can find a picture of the actual outside of the book cover, you can kind of tell here that because the Loteria is popped out, it's just so cool. Very cool.
That is so cool. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. Another book that Melissa mentioned was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. And I also was a little resistant about this book because I don't know, I really like realistic fiction, and sometimes I like fantasy, but I'm really picky about it. And I didn't know what I'd think. There are lots of books that kind of deal with this now, with where they start out in a real setting and then they kind of go off into this fantasy world. And I wasn't sure, but I really love this one. Also, there's a lot more anxiety in this. Partially because Amari's brother goes missing. He's a college age student. He's brilliant. He goes missing, and she's very, very worried about that. And it leads to an incident at school where she ends up losing her scholarship to her fancy school. And it's really tense and it's a really stressful time for Amari. But then she receives this mysterious package. It's a briefcase. And it turns out it's from her brother, and it invites her to spend the summer at this magical training camp for the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And so this terrific book deals with racism and bullying and lots of real world issues, but then it also introduces and throws in some fantastical characters like fairies, witches, ghosts, unicorns. But it was a wonderful, fun, great story. And there's a sequel out. I think there's one sequel out. I think they're coming out with a third. And I think the idea is to do a trilogy. I hear there's talk of movies too, which a lot of these books can be translated into that. But then, talking animals, speaking of talking animals, it leads me to another book that somebody, I don't know, who's going to talk about this one?
Oh, it's me. I'm really excited about it.
Okay.
It's The Silver Arrow. It's by Lev Grossman. This book is about two kids. They are bored. They're bored. They're bored with being kids. They just lead their kid lives, do their kid stuff. They've got piano practice, blah, blah, blah. Everything's super boring. However, Kate is having a birthday, and she has something that most of us do not have, which is a wealthy, eccentric uncle. and she decides that she needs to shake things up because she's bored. And so she writes this uncle that she's never met a letter that basically says, "Hey, it's my birthday. How about sending me a present? Because you are wealthy. Think about it." And he does. He sends her a train. And she gets up in the morning and sees the train and she's like, "What?" But what she really doesn't expect, I mean, she didn't expect the train. What she really doesn't expect is a magic train. And of course, she has to get on the train. She takes her brother with her, and it leads to one of my favorite scenes, which is where they get to choose the cars that go on the back of the engine. And she, of course, picks a library car. There's also a swimming pool car and a candy car. And along the way, I know, I would ride the heck out of this train. Along the way, they pick up animals, and the animals can talk, and the animals have stuff to say. It's a really magical story. It is an excellent read aloud. So if your family is into reading together, this one is great for that. It's really enjoyable for all ages. I love it. I love it a lot. It's a great adventure.
Another book that kind of ties in with magical animals is another graphic novel, Marshmallow Jordan by Alina Chao. And this one is kind of, again, there's anxiety, and sometimes your dreams don't go as planned. But who knows, maybe a magical elephant will show up, or maybe you'll find the magic within yourself to, change things up. One thing I really liked about this book is it took place in Indonesia, which I don't know if I've read a book that took place in Indonesia before. And that's the thing I love about finding all these books is we get to explore different worlds. I was saying before, this great quote that I heard, this age group, we're not just learning to read anymore, we're reading to learn. And that doesn't just include learning facts like Factopia, it includes learning, facts about going there and being the character. So yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful story. And I really, really love it. And it is the one book that a child, actually, she's a fifth grader, so she's almost a teen, she told me about, and she was like, "You have to read this book. It is my favorite current book." And I read it and I understood why. So that's a great one. Another book that I really want to encourage people to read is Black Boy Joy, which is 17 stories celebrating Black boyhood. And it is edited by Kwame and Mbalia. And it is just a wonderful book featuring short stories by 17 different authors, including Jason Reynolds, who did Stunt Boy, and including B.B. Alston, who did Amari. But the one thing I really kind of liked about this book too is I love short story collections, but when Kwame Mbalia, who's a great author in his own right, when he put together this collection, he curated it in such a way. He started with his own short story, part one of his own short story. And it kind of left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And then you read some more books by great authors, again, who I just mentioned. Then there's the middle part, and you go back to part two of his little story. And then you read some more books, and then part three. And it all comes together so nicely. And that's a hard art, is to put together and edit such a collection. So not just reading each individual story, but to see the thoughtfulness that went into kind of piecing them together. It's a really beautiful collaboration. I don't know, was that,
That's it.
That's it? That was the last book?
That's the last book. And I love it. I love that we left it a joy. Like, I feel like the whole list is a roller coaster. It's like Factopia, like you're following the line, you're following the curvy path, and it ends in joy. And I love talking about books with you all. I'm really glad that you were here today, and I'm really glad to be on this committee with you. It makes me super happy. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do at the library. So friends out there watching, you can find all of these cool summer reads books and so many more in the kids section at the Skokie Public Library. And finally, if you can't find what you need or you don't know what you need, we are here for you. So as you can see, Mandy, Melissa, and I love talking about books, and that is true of the rest of the youth and teen services groups as well. You can come visit us in person, or you can fill out a Bookmatch request and we will put together a personalized list and email it to you. In addition to our Bookmatch for kids, we also offer a Bookmatch for grown-ups and a Bookmatch for teens. You can find a link in our chat or on our website at skokielibrary.info. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can hang around. We will be showing the Hot Summer Reads Committee next, or you can join us next month for more thrilling book conversations. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.